I never thought moving into a new neighborhood would turn into a battle for survival, not against nature, not against crime, but against the most overbearing, power-hungry HOA president of all time. At first, I was just excited to start fresh. New house, new surroundings, a quiet suburban life. What more could I ask for? But the moment my moving truck pulled into my driveway, she appeared. She materialized out of nowhere, clipboard clutched tightly in one hand like a weapon, an oversized HOA president pin gleaming on her navy blue blazer. Her entire presence screamed authority, but not the respectable kind. The kind of authority that loves rules for the sake of having rules, and loves even more to enforce them on everyone else. She didn't introduce herself with a warm welcome, no, "Hey, nice to meet you. Excited to have you in the neighborhood." Nope. Instead, she stopped right in front of my truck, squinted at the tires, and pulled out a measuring tape. "Your truck is blocking the sidewalk by exactly 7 inches. That's a violation of Section 12-4 of our community bylaws. Moving trucks are also only permitted between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. I trust you'll be finished by then." I stared at her, caught completely off guard. Yeah. I just got here." She nodded like she had just granted me a privilege rather than dictated an arbitrary rule. "Good. I'm Karen Wilkins, by the way. HOA president. If you have any questions about the rules, don't hesitate to ask. I'll be watching." Then she just turned and walked away. I should have known right then and there that I was dealing with someone different. Someone who wasn't just an HOA president, but a self-appointed dictator of the entire neighborhood. I chalked it up to just an annoying first impression. But I had no idea that Karen wasn't done with me yet. Not even close. The first few days were normal. I unpacked, met some neighbors, and started settling in. Then, the violation notices started showing up. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I got one on my door about my grass being too tall. Okay, fair enough. Maybe the previous owner didn't mow recently. Then came another one. My garden hose had been left visible from the street for over 12 hours. What? Since when is that a rule? The next one nearly made me laugh out loud. My bird feeder was attracting non-approved species of birds. Excuse me? Are the birds supposed to submit an application before stopping by? Then came the one that broke me. Your front door wreath contains excessive amounts of red during a non-holiday month. I stared at the notice for a full minute, in complete disbelief. First of all, how much red is too much red? Who decides that? Secondly, it was literally just a simple decorative wreath I liked. Apparently that was enough to offend the aesthetic gods of Karen's HOA. I laughed at first, but the fines started rolling in. $50 for the hose, another $75 for the grass, $100 citation for the unholy crime of too much red. I tried to keep my cool. I told myself it wasn't worth the drama, that I should just go along with it. But Karen wasn't just about enforcing rules. She was about absolute control. And she was just getting started. One afternoon I was working in my home office when I noticed something strange. A shadow moved outside my window. At first, I thought it was a delivery driver, but when I turned my head, there she was. Karen. Face pressed against my glass, hands cupped around her eyes to block out the glare. I had to do a double take. What the hell? I walked over, opened the door, and startled her mid-peeping session. She nearly tripped over a flower pot trying to step back. "Oh, Michael, didn't see you there." "You didn't see me. You were looking through my damn window." "Karen, what exactly are you doing?" She straightened her blazer, cleared her throat, and acted like she hadn't just been caught spying on my house. "I was just conducting a quarterly interior compliance review. Your curtains appear to be navy blue. That's concerning." "What?" Section 17-5 clearly states that all window treatments visible from the street must be in neutral or earth tones. They're black. Still not neutral. I'll make a note that you need to replace them within 14 days. I stood there trying to process what I had just heard. Karen. I don't recall ever seeing anything in the bylaws about interior design approval. She gave me that tight, forced smile that was one step away from a snarl. Perhaps you haven't received the updated bylaws. I'll have a copy delivered to you immediately. The next day, I found a printed packet in my mailbox, clearly homemade, complete with handwritten additions. Every single new rule seemed to give Karen more power. She could fine people for indoor decorations. She could review package deliveries. She could approve or deny what types of beverages you could drink on your porch. I'm not joking. Section 22-7 of her new rules stated, no beverage containers exceeding 8 ounces may be visible from the street. Karen had lost her damn mind. I wanted to fight back, but I thought, this is just one crazy lady. Surely the rest of the neighborhood won't go along with this. Surely she can't get away with this. Oh, how wrong I was. Because what happened next was so much worse. My packages started disappearing, and guess who was behind it? Karen. And this time, I wasn't just going to sit back and take it. This time I was going to play her game, and I was going to win. It started small. A missing Amazon package here, a delayed shipment there. At first I didn't think much of it. Maybe the delivery driver messed up. Maybe a neighbor grabbed it by accident. Or maybe it was just one of those things that happen from time to time. But then it kept happening. Day after day I'd check my delivery tracking, see the delivered notification, walk to my front porch, and find nothing. I called Amazon. They insisted the package had been dropped off. I checked with the delivery service, and they provided time-stamped proof of the drop-offs. That's when it hit me. Someone was stealing my packages. The thought of porch pirates annoyed me, but it also confused me. This was a gated community. We weren't exactly an easy target for random thieves. So I did what anyone would do. I ordered a doorbell camera. The irony? That package also disappeared. Now I was pissed. I borrowed a spare security camera from a friend and set it up in secret, tucking it out of sight where no one could see it. The very next day, I got the answer I was looking for. It wasn't some random thief. It wasn't a porch pirate. It was Karen. And she wasn't even trying to hide it. She strode up my driveway like she owned the place, casually bent down, picked up the package, and examined it like a quality control inspector at a warehouse. Then, without hesitation, she walked off with it. I watched in absolute disbelief. She wasn't stealing out of desperation. She wasn't doing it for money. She was doing it for control. The next day, I marched right across the street and knocked on her door. She answered with that same fake smile I was starting to despise. Michael, what a surprise. What can I do for you? Karen, I have a question. Have you been taking my packages? The smile barely faltered. Oh, Michael, I wouldn't call it taking. I've simply been enforcing the community's package aesthetic standards. The what? Section 23-9. Deliveries must comply with neighborhood visual harmony. Certain boxes are disruptive. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Karen, you stole my doorbell camera. That's not about aesthetics. She didn't even blink. Security devices must be approved by the HOA. You didn't submit the proper paperwork. I was stunned. There's no rule against cameras. Not yet. I almost lost it. Karen, I want my packages back. Now. That's when she pulled out her favorite weapon, bureaucratic nonsense. Of course, just fill out a package exemption form, submit it to the board, and after review I'd be happy to return them. And where do I get this form? Oh, I'm still drafting it, but once it's finalized, you can submit your request at the next board meeting. That's in, let me check my notes, 3 weeks. I stood there, clenching my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I could report her. I could call the cops. But she was hiding behind the HOA. I needed a better plan, so I played dumb. I forced a smile. "Okay, Karen. I'll wait for the form." She grinned, thinking she'd won. But what she didn't know was that I was already planning her downfall. I started gathering evidence. I installed a second hidden camera that caught her in the act again and again. I talked to neighbors. A lot of them had missing packages too. One woman lost her daughter's birthday presents. An elderly couple never got their medication delivery. A single mom down the street. Missing school supplies. This wasn't just about me. Karen was stealing from the entire neighborhood. I filed police reports every time a package vanished. I compiled the footage. I documented everything. But I still needed one final move. Something that would end this once and for all. And that's when I got the perfect idea. A skunk. Not a real one, just the next best thing. I called my cousin, who worked in wildlife rehab. She had access to skunk essence. "This stuff is intense," she warned. "Even a tiny amount will make someone's house smell for days." I grinned. That's exactly what I need. I prepared the package carefully. A fake delivery from an expensive tech store. Inside, a small, tightly sealed container with a pressure-sensitive trigger. The moment Karen opened it, the lid would pop off and release a concentrated dose of skunk spray. Completely legal, completely harmless, but absolutely disgusting. I placed the box right on my porch, and then I waited. Sure enough, Karen took the bait. Like clockwork, she crept up my driveway, grabbed the box, and carried it back to her house. 20 minutes later, I heard a scream. Not just any scream, a scream of pure horror. Karen stumbled out of her front door, gagging, eyes watering, hands flailing. Her perfectly styled hair was a mess. Her designer clothes were ruined. "Oh my God, it's a chemical attack. Someone call 911. Her husband ran out behind her, covering his nose with his shirt. The HOA beautification committee, who had been inside her house, rushed out, coughing and choking. Some of them stumbled into bushes. One woman threw up in Karen's prize-winning flower bed. Neighbors poured out of their homes, watching the spectacle. Mrs. Abernathy, the retired chemistry teacher, walked up and sniffed the air. "That's skunk." Karen shrieked. "No, it's chemical warfare. I'm being targeted." Me. "Karen, why were you opening my package?" The entire street fell silent. She froze. The realization hit her like a truck. And before she could come up with a pathetic excuse, the police pulled up. Officer Reynolds stepped out, arms crossed. "Karen, we need to talk." And just like that, the reign of HOA Karen was over. The first scream was loud enough to wake the dead. Then came the second one, followed by pure chaos. Karen burst out of her house like she was on fire, arms flailing, eyes streaming with tears, gagging so hard she nearly collapsed on the lawn. Behind her, her husband stumbled out, coughing into his sleeve, his face twisted in disgust. Then came the HOA committee members. All 6 of them, a group of well-dressed, middle-aged suburbanites who had been sitting comfortably in Karen's living room just minutes ago, sipping overpriced wine and discussing the urgent need to regulate lawn gnome attire. Now, they were staggering out of Karen's house like it had been hit by a biological weapon. One woman was holding a decorative throw pillow over her nose like it was a gas mask. Another tripped over Karen's hydrangeas, gagging into the bushes. Mrs. Thompson, a woman in her 60s who had spent years loyally backing Karen's ridiculous HOA rules, dry-heaved into her handbag. Karen herself was in full meltdown mode. Her once pristine blazer was stained with something wet. Her perfectly styled hair was now a frizzy mess, and her eyes were so red and puffy that she looked like she had just survived a house fire. "Oh my God! Oh my God! It's a chemical attack!" she screamed, stumbling onto the driveway. Her husband coughed violently. "What the hell is that smell? It's in my nose. It's in my throat." Karen whirled around in panic. "It's a toxic gas. Someone called 911. By now, neighbors were stepping outside, watching the spectacle unfold. Old Mr. Abernathy, the retired chemistry teacher, took one whiff of the air and laughed out loud. "That's not chemicals, dear," he announced, grinning. "That's skunk." The second he said it, a wave of realization rippled through the crowd. A few people gasped. A few people laughed. One guy pulled out his phone to record. Karen froze. Her hands were still outstretched, holding the half-open package as if it were a live bomb. "A skunk," she echoed, horrified. Abernathy nodded, smirking. "Yup, that's pure concentrated skunk essence. Pretty impressive stuff. Won't kill you, but it'll make your house unlivable for a while." Karen's jaw dropped. She stared at the package in her hands, as if she had just realized she was the one who set off the stink bomb. Then her head snapped toward me. "You!" she shrieked, voice breaking. "You did this!" I raised an eyebrow. "Me?" I said, playing dumb. "Don't act innocent," she screeched, stomping toward me. "You knew this would happen. You tricked me into taking this." At that moment, every single neighbor was watching. Karen looked like a woman completely unhinged, half crying, half gagging, clutching the stink bomb package in one hand, while wildly gesturing at me with the other. And that's when I went in for the kill. I folded my arms and said, as casually as possible, "Karen, why were you opening my package?" The entire street fell silent. Karen's mouth snapped shut. She froze, eyes darting from me to the crowd, to the police cruiser pulling into her driveway. The silence stretched for a few agonizing seconds. Then Mr. Parker, the guy who had been missing 3 weeks' worth of medication deliveries, spoke up. "Wait a minute. That package was yours?" he asked, looking at me. I nodded. "Yep, it was delivered to my porch earlier today." Parker frowned. "Then why the hell was it in Karen's house?" Karen physically flinched. Her brain was scrambling for an excuse. I could see it on her face. I was just securing it for compliance reasons," she sputtered. Mrs. Thompson, still gagging into her handbag, looked up and scowled. "What the hell does that even mean, Karen?" "I was protecting the community," Karen shrieked, waving the package like a lunatic. "From what?" I shot back. "A box of skunk spray?" Another neighbor, the single mom who had lost her daughter's birthday presents, suddenly stepped forward. "Hold on," she said slowly. "Has she been taking other people's packages?" Another heavy silence. Then everything clicked into place. The murmuring started. The realization. The growing anger. Karen's face paled. She could see it happening in real time. The moment her iron grip over the HOA started to shatter. Mr. Parker narrowed his eyes. "So, the medication I never got, the birthday gifts that never showed up, the missing school supplies, that was you?" "No," Karen yelped. I was just, I have the authority." That was the final straw. People started shouting. One woman yelled, "You took my son's asthma medication?" Another neighbor, shaking his head, muttered, "She's been running this neighborhood like a damn dictatorship for years. This is insane." Karen whirled back toward me, face red, eyes wild. "You did this to me," she screamed. "You set me up. You ruined everything." I just shrugged. "Karen, you stole from me." Another silence. A police officer stepped forward. Karen Wilkins, he said. We need to have a conversation. Karen tried to argue. She tried to deny it. She tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. The footage, the stolen packages, the neighbors coming forward one by one. Karen was done. As the police escorted her toward the car, she let out one last desperate scream. I was protecting the community. I was the only thing keeping this neighborhood in order. You'll all be sorry. No one was listening. The neighbors had already turned away, exchanging phone numbers, discussing the first real HOA election in years. Mrs. Thompson was laughing into her handbag. Mr. Parker muttered, "Good riddance." And me? I just stood there, arms crossed, watching Karen's reign of terror come to an end. And for the first time since moving in, the neighborhood finally felt like home. The entire neighborhood had turned against her. Karen was still trying to fight it, still clinging to whatever authority she thought she had left. But it was over. The moment the police officer started questioning her, the HOA board members, some of whom had been her closest allies, started backing away like she had a contagious disease. The smell of skunk spray was still thick in the air, clinging to Karen's clothes, her skin, her hair. She was still gagging, still coughing, still furious. But she wasn't just mad at me anymore. She was mad at everyone. Because in Karen's mind, this wasn't her fault. This wasn't because she had been stealing packages, or because she had been running the HOA like her personal empire. No, to Karen, this was everyone else's fault. You're all ungrateful, she shrieked, waving her arms at the crowd. I have dedicated years to this community. Years. I am the only reason property values are still high. I am the only reason this neighborhood has standards. Someone in the crowd snorted. Yeah, Karen, stealing asthma medication and birthday gifts really helped our property values. The crowd laughed. Karen's face turned an even deeper shade of red. You people wouldn't know how to run an HOA if your lives depended on it. You need me. You think you can just vote me out and everything will be fine. Ha! You'll be living in filth in 6 months. You'll be begging me to come back. No one was begging. In fact, people were already making plans. Right there, on her front lawn, neighbors started organizing. Mrs. Thompson, the woman who had spent years supporting Karen's ridiculous rules, was suddenly leading the charge. We should have a real election, she said loudly. No more Karen running unopposed. We need a board that actually listens to people. Mr. Parker nodded. And we should take a look at the finances. I want to know where all our HOA fees have been going. Karen's eyes widened in panic. You can't do that, she shrieked. Mrs. Thompson smirked. Actually, Karen, yes, we can. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. And while we're at it, another neighbor chimed in, we should probably get rid of all those stupid rules Karen made up. The HOA board members, Karen's former inner circle, looked at each other and nodded in agreement. That was when Karen finally realized it. She had lost. Not just her position, not just her fake authority. She had lost the entire neighborhood. And then, to make matters worse, a second police car pulled up. Karen whipped around, eyes darting, still trying to find a way out of this. This is unnecessary, she snapped at the officer standing beside her. I have done nothing wrong. The officer raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, we have multiple reports of stolen property, video evidence of you taking packages that don't belong to you and, well, an entire street full of witnesses. Karen's mouth snapped shut. The officer continued. Right now you're facing multiple counts of mail theft, which is a federal crime. We're going to need you to come down to the station. Karen looked around in disbelief. This wasn't happening. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had spent years controlling this neighborhood. She had built a kingdom. And now, in a single evening, it was all falling apart. She tried one last desperate move. I will sue every single one of you, she screamed. This is defamation. I will have all of you evicted. You will regret this. No one cared. The neighbors had already turned away. People were exchanging phone numbers, making plans for an emergency meeting. Someone suggested a community barbecue to celebrate Liberation Day. And Karen was still screaming, still flailing, still trying to fight a battle she had already lost. The officer sighed. Ma'am, please put your hands behind your back. The sound of handcuffs clicking into place was the most satisfying thing I had heard all week. Karen tried to resist, but it was useless. As she was led to the police car, still gagging from the lingering skunk smell, she turned to look at me. You think you've won? She shrieked. I tilted my head. I mean, yeah, kinda. She let out a final wail of rage as the door slammed shut behind her. And just like that, the reign of HOA Karen was officially over. The next morning, a letter from the HOA board appeared in my mailbox. Karen had been removed from her position immediately. The board, now under new leadership, apologized for everything, admitted that her rules were complete nonsense, and agreed to pay back every resident she had wrongfully fined. They also requested that I not press charges. I considered it for a moment. And then I laughed. No, Karen had spent years abusing her power. She had stolen from people, lied, and manipulated an entire community. She had made my life hell from the moment I moved in. I wasn't about to let her walk away from this. So I filed my formal complaint. And with all the video evidence, police reports, and witness statements, I knew exactly how this would end. Karen wasn't just going to lose her HOA position. She was going to lose everything. That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee in hand. Across the street, Karen's house was completely dark. She was gone. In the distance, I could hear the sounds of neighbors chatting, kids playing, laughter filling the air. For the first time since moving in, this neighborhood actually felt like a community. And as I took a sip of my coffee, from a mug that was way over Karen's ridiculous 8-ounce limit, I couldn't help but smile, because for the first time in years, the HOA was finally free.